Good evening, welcome. A small group, but we're here. So I'm Pat Gales, and I'm a member of the Friends of the Dayton Public Library, and we've been sponsoring a candidates night for a long time now, I think from the early 90s. And it's just our way of serving the community and providing information to you about the candidates that are running for election on April 6th. Before we begin, so everyone knows what the ground rules are, and our candidates had a chance to have these in advance. It's your opportunity to meet the candidate, and they're going to be able to do opening statements and then questions from the audience. So the candidates will be limited to 3 minutes for an opening statement and given up to 2 minutes to answer questions. What we typically do is take each position one by one. So we'll start at the bottom of the ballot and work our way up. The last one will be selectmen. Questions will be taken from the audience after being acknowledged by me, the moderator. And please use the microphone that's right up front here. And once everyone has had a chance to ask a question, a second question can be asked. Word questions, so they're not just a yes or no or maybe answer. If a question's already been asked, it should not be repeated, and it should reflect the issues of the greatest interest to the entire community and cover a broad range of topics. Candidates and audience members are strongly encouraged to focus on the issues, not on personalities, and no personal attacks will be allowed. The candidates are not distributing campaign literature here on school grounds. Each candidate will have an opportunity to answer each question that pertains to them. Candidates will be timed and given a 30-second warning with a sign. Tracy has the sign. Brenda has the timer, and you'll hear it. But you'll be able to complete your thoughts before your turn is over. If time permits, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement, and we plan to conclude by 8:30. Meet the Candidates Night is being taped and will be shown on Channel 9 at a later date. And thank you for being here, and candidates, thank you for participating. So I'll just read through the ballot first so we know who's running, because not everyone is here. For Tree Warden, we have Tom Ferry's running for re-election. Planning Board is Dan Higgins, and Dan is here. Dan, you want to just give him a little hey, hi, yep, there you go. Town Clerk is Shara, right here. Board of Sewer Commissioners is Mark McOra, and he's not present tonight. Board of Sewer Commissioners, Tom Ferry, is not here tonight. Library Board of Trustees is Rita Arujo. Parks and Recreation Commissioner, Kevin Smith Jr. We have 2 candidates running for school committee, and you can vote for 2, and they're both for 3 years, Chris Andrade and Glenn Jefferson. For Board of Assessors, Nancy Gulak, she's a candidate for re-election. Town Moderator, Kevin Smith. And then for Board of Selectmen, we have Mark Pacheco. So we will begin, and we'll start with opening statements. Once everyone has had a chance to do their opening statements, then we'll do questions. And you just can direct your questions to whatever candidate you are interested in learning more about. So Shara, would you like to start with your opening statement?
Sure. Oh, just right here? Okay. I have to stand up. Good evening. First, I'd like to thank the Friends of the Library for hosting this event, and for each and every one of you for coming out today to support your candidates. My name is Shara Costa, and I'm running for Town Clerk for a 1-year term. I was appointed to this role on July 31st, 2023, to fulfill the Town Clerk vacancy until the April 6th election. and then finishing out a one-year term to fulfill an unexpired term. Try saying that 3 times fast. I have lived in Dayton for 14 years with my husband, Frank, and my 2 handsome boys, Jacob and Jackson. I stand before you today humbled and grateful for the opportunity to both address you and serve you. The 2 traits I embody are being personable and driven. Being personable, to me, is crucial for building meaningful connections and fostering positive relationships in a world that is increasingly interconnected. The ability to relate to others with empathy, kindness, and sincerity is invaluable, especially as the town clerk. Know that when you come to the town clerk's office for records, dog licensing, or any other needs, you will be met with that virtue. I am also driven to succeed. It's about having a clear vision of what you want to achieve and relentlessly pursuing it. In both my personal and my professional life, I strive for this excellence. I am excited to be your town clerk. We are not only a small town with a big heart, we are also mighty. And I am blessed to be part of this amazing community. And thank you so much for being part of my journey. Thank you.
Next, we have on the ballot Rita Arujo for the Library Board of Trustees.
Good evening, and thanks to the Friends of the Library for always hosting this every year. My name is Rita Arujo. I lived on William Street for 77 years, so I've been around for a while. Since I was in elementary school, I went to the library, and Mrs. Pilling gave us our library number, and mine was interesting, I later found out in life. When I first ran for the library trustee 3 years ago, I said that I believe that the library is the center of the community. I still believe that. It's a sanctuary for everyone, and everyone is welcome, and it's an information center. There's not just books in our library. There are services. Some of the services are downloadable audiobooks, ebooks, magazines, museum passes, hotspots for computers, computer laptops, and other services. And I hope that people will take a ride down to the libraries and meet with the staff and find out what they actually do down there. They're a great staff. One of the things when I ran the first time was I was hoping to get a new library, or at least increase the space of the old library. And I'm happy to say that we were able to get an old historical building that's being refurbished and keeping the authenticity of that building. And it's on schedule to open the first of the year. And it's been going along budget-wise, and it's getting very exciting when we have our meetings. And I'd like to thank the students at Bristol Plymouth who have been doing the work, and hopefully we're trying to get some of the DR students to also help us out, which would be great. Being a former teacher, I find that that's the best learning experience for these students, to get their physical hands on doing what they want to do. And that's about it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rita. Next, we have for Parks and Recreation Commissioner Kevin Smith, Jr.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you to the Friends of the Dayton Public Library for hosting this event and affording us this opportunity to not only share our thoughts with you, but also to hear from our fellow Dayton residents. My name is Kevin Smith, Jr. I moved to Dayton back in 2012 with my wife, Tiffany, and my daughter Layla, who's now 13. And in 2015, our family grew by one with the birth of our daughter Parker. And Parker does have the one up on us with the ability to say that she was born and raised here, which I've learned throughout my time does account for a little bit of pull. We chose to move to Dayton because of the reputation of the school district providing outstanding special education services, and I can honestly say that the schools have met and exceeded our expectations for both of our daughters. I didn't envision myself almost 12 years ago being involved in town government, but life has a funny way of opening up new doors sometimes. What started as a Facebook argument with the former selectman has turned into 4+ years of working with some amazing individuals and organizations, as well as the opportunity to meet so many wonderful people in our community, which has in turn fostered some wonderful relationships. For Parks and Recreation, I started my journey as a member of the Commission on Disability, which I still serve on today. As many of you know, my oldest daughter, who was born with a spinal cord defect called spina bifida, is a wheelchair user. After about a year on Commission on Disability, the opportunity to run for the Parks and Rec Commission presented itself. At that time, I had really begun to truly be passionate about promoting and improving accessibility and inclusion. One of the biggest deficits our Parks and Rec Commission faced was a lack of accessibility and inclusion in our parks and playgrounds. So it was a natural fit for me to be able to not only address something I was passionate about, but would also benefit our entire community. I'm so proud of the collective effort on both the North Dayton Playground and the Mass Office on Disability grant, which provided not only a much needed, but also a long-awaited new level of accessibility and inclusion to our town. I'm also proud of all of our efforts to address the many maintenance needs of our parks and the work that has been done to breathe new life into them, largely in part to the hard work of our highway department members. We also have been able to bring new events to our community, like the Firecracker Festival, Earth Day cleanup, and painting in the park, as well as continued Dayton traditions like the Easter egg hunt with help from the Dayton Police Department, Community Outreach Officer Ferreira, and SROs Hathaway and Bennett, and of course Oki. The last 3 years have been a learning experience for me, navigating town government operating procedures, department budgets, and procurement processes, and collaborating with various town departments. It has been a learning process and a lot of work, but it has also been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to the opportunity to continue to serve the community for the next 3 years.
Thank you, Kevin. Are you ready, timekeeper? For the Dayton Rehoboth School District School Committee, we'll start with Glenn.
Hey everyone, good evening. Thank you for hosting this event, and I'll try and keep this short and sweet. So yeah, my history, I'm seeking my 3rd term here for Dayton Rehoboth School Committee. I've been in Dayton my entire life, never left. When it came time we got married, my wife and I decided to move here. Well, not move here, build here, live up off of Elm Street, and then we have 2 children now. One's a freshman, and the other is in 8th grade here. So a little history of how I got involved with school committee, which is one of the least thankful jobs. We get zero compensation and just get a lot of abuse throughout it. And my history was back in 2014 when my daughter was starting to get ready for kindergarten. It was you start getting involved because full-day kindergarten at the time was something coming, and a lot of parents wanted to get involved. And then we started being made aware of the budgeting issues that were going on between the town of Rehoboth in 2018, and for the last 10 years it's been a tumultuous year between fighting with the 2 towns, and it finally had calmed down around 2019, and then COVID hit, and now we're on the pendulum swing the other way, where we're fighting even harder with the state and less funding, and even the towns are struggling to fund our assessments. While we lose kids each year more and more to Bristol Aggie and Bristol Plymouth. So every student that leaves affects what we can offer in our district. So we're kind of in a uphill fight and trying to advocate for keeping the best education that we can in the district and retaining kids. So my goals, obviously, for the next term is to continue to advocate for what we need for the kids and advocate for the budget. I see Lenny out there. You'll always hear me advocating that we need to fund this district more and more, and I understand it's tough against the town services, and it's going to be a constant struggle between, member towns one year or the member town the other, or can we fund our public safety, which is we got to figure out how to get everything for the taxpayers and trying not to kill everyone with taxes, because we are, in this town at least, forced to pay Bristol Aggie, Bristol Plymouth, and the DR regional school budgets. So it's unlike Berkeley, our neighboring town, which has a non-regional school district. So I see my timer come up, so I appreciate everyone's attendance and looking forward to serving everyone.
Thank you. Chris?
Welcome, everyone. My name is Christopher Andrade. I want to thank the Friends of the Dayton Public Library tonight for putting this on. I agree with a lot of the sentiments that Glenn mentioned. I'm just going to tell you briefly why I'm running for school committee. I have been on the school committee, I'm not sure exactly, Glenn and I were trying to figure it out, probably a little bit more than 10 years. And my sons both graduated from DR, and we're in the full K 1 through 12. I don't know if they had full-time kindergarten when I was coming here, and I'm glad they do today. The reason I'm running is we need leadership and continuity on the school committee. The school committee has had a lot of changes in the past several years. There's been turnover at the committee. There's been significant turnover at the administration. And so I feel myself and Glenn can help to provide that continuity, that leadership. I'm constantly working with the superintendent, explaining to him why certain things get done a certain way, why we need to kind of watch out for this kind of thing, taking the pulse of our community and make sure he understands that. He's been doing a very good job, Superintendent Rooney, and we appreciate him on our committee, in our district. So I'm primarily running for that leadership and then to help guide the town through some of the difficult choices we have to make in the next few years related to, as Glenn mentioned, finances. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to talk further, but the state is only giving us a 0.5% increase in our educational funding this year. And we have cut the budget, I think 21 positions to get down to a 3.8% budget. So you can see we still have a problem. And we're gonna have to work through the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, and the town to kind of come to a resolution there. The other thing is Dayton Elementary School. This school is in pretty good shape, Dayton Middle School. I think it's only 30 years or so old, and the elementary school was built in 1957. I was not here in 1957. I'm sure it was a great school back then, but it doesn't really meet the needs of the 20th century education, and it doesn't meet the needs of the enrollment of our district. So we're going to have difficult conversations with the community, how we can accommodate the number of elementary school students we have, the number of kindergarten students we have, and now the number of pre-K students that we have, both educationally and space-wise in the district. So be happy to talk about any or all of those things if there's any questions. And also feel free to come to school committee meetings. They have a public, it's every Tuesday, every second and fourth Tuesday of the month. And we have a public opening right at the beginning of the meeting. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So, Dan, you probably thought I forgot you. I skipped right over you. I'm going to let Dan go because he really should have gone first because he's at planning board's at the bottom of the ballot, and then we'll proceed with Nancy and Mark. Okay. Go ahead, Dan.
Good evening. Thank you to the Friends of the Dayton Public Library for hosting this event and for everyone for showing up this evening. My name is Dan Higgins. I am running for re-election to the Planning Board. In terms of my background, my partner and I moved to Dayton in 2016. We originally came to the area due to work obligations, but decided to settle in Dayton specifically because we wanted to live in a small town and one with a rather large sense of community, and because we fell in love with the town the first time we drove through here. I have served on multiple committees in town, including being the current vice chair of the Planning Board, chairman of the Development and Industrial Commission, a member of the Community Preservation Committee, and until recently a member of the Open Space Committee. My work background is in information technology, primarily in database management and working as a data analyst. And although I don't have the background in construction or the related trades that are often presented to the Planning Board, I do think that the same critical eye and analytical approach that I practice professionally have lent themselves well to the role that I'm currently filling on the planning board. Also, my background working for over 25 years with a variety of businesses and my role on the Development and Industrial Commission have given me a very pro-business perspective that I hope to continue as a member of the planning board. And the planning board has a responsibility to implement the bylaws that the residents have put in place, but it also has a role in discussing what is possible for the future and presenting those options to the residents to weigh and make decisions on. Hopefully, I will have an opportunity to continue to be part of those two very important roles. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Now for the Board of Assessors, Nancy Goulat.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming, and thank you to the Friends. I have a long history in this town, some good, some bad. I came to this town in 1962 when I got married. And my background is public education for over 21 years at Dighton Rehoboth Regional on the financial and administration end of education. When I left Dighton Rehoboth, I went to the UMass President's office, and 12 and a half years later retired from there as senior auditor in the internal audit department. I've worked in a number of areas in government. My education, I have an associate's from Bristol Community. I have a Bachelor of Science from UMass Dartmouth in Business Administration with a minor in accounting, and I have a Master of Science in Management from Lesley University. I've served as a selectman several times, I think close to 9 years. Board of Health when we were together as a board. I'm currently a member of the Board of Assessors, a position I didn't run for. I was taking a year off 3 years ago and had decided not to run for selectman. And to my surprise, when I went to the school to find out who won the selectman's race, I found out I was elected to the Board of Assessors. Didn't know anything about it. But anyhow, I took the training and achieved what I had to do and earned my certificate. Board of Assessors is very important, and I think I was written in because I realized nobody was running 3 years ago, and I said, that's a shame. That job has to be filled. The man I replaced had held the job for 35 years. Contrary to what people believe, the Board of Assessors does not set the tax rate. What you do at town meeting determines what the tax rate's going to be. Whenever you see an article that's raise and appropriate, it's a simple formula. R and A equals T. R and A equals taxes. It's the RATS formula, as I call it. So think of that. Raise and appropriate equals taxes. Other forms of funding do not affect the tax rate. So we pretty much put together what you vote. And then we meet with the selectmen and tell them what we need. We work with other town departments because they tell us what we have for aid and other sources of income. So it's very important that people understand what happens at town meeting. I will say, we have an office staff that's willing to help you with any questions about abatements or exemptions or anything like that. So please take advantage of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Kevin, are you going to say anything again, or are you all set?
Well,
I didn't think so.
I'm not going to start over and give you my whole background again. Just to speak briefly on the town moderator role, I'd like to start off by saying that I'm absolutely fascinated with the rich history surrounding the process of the town meeting form of government, and specifically the equality of each voter having a say in how our town operates both financially and procedurally. It would be an honor to serve as the moderator and preside over our town meetings. The moderator is also tasked with the responsibility of appointing members of our finance committee. One of my main reasons for running for moderator is I'd like to change the way that our Finance Committee is selected. I'd like to openly, in public, interview both current members or any new members who wish to serve on the committee, and allow for the town residents to weigh in on those appointments. It's a tall task for one individual to select those members who ultimately make the recommendations to town meeting along with the Board of Selectmen for items which we raise and appropriate, which Nancy had mentioned. So I'd like to make that process a little bit more transparent. One other thing that really stuck out to me in our past town meetings is there, especially recently with proposed bylaw changes and things of that nature, and myself having 2 roles where I'll be on Parks and Recs, there's going to be moments where I will need to abstain as the town moderator and have somebody else preside over the meeting. And there was 2 instances in past meetings, once where Selectman Karen and another time where Town Clerk Costa had to preside over the meeting. And I want to make sure that my colleagues are prepared to step in those moments. I don't think it's a normal role for them, and it was just one kind of observation that I recognized in our last 2, in the annual and special town meetings. So we know those things are coming, we see them on the warrant, so I want to make sure that, they're prepared to step in when needed, because in my opinion, at town meeting, either we all succeed together or we all fail together.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, and now we'll hear for our candidate for Board of Selectmen, Mark Pacheco.
Hello, Dayton. For those who don't know me, my name is Mark Pacheco, candidate for Dayton Board of Selectmen. I want to start out by thanking the Friends of the Dayton Library who put on Candidates Night year after year, and thank you all for coming out tonight. Many of you know I was proudly your town clerk for a little over 2 years before going to Taunton as their Director of Elections. During that time, I met so many wonderful people, and I learned how our local town government works. I still feel I want to give back to my community, and that was my intent when I pulled papers for the Board of Selectmen. When I pulled, I did so seeing myself simply as an option. I never anticipated I would be the lone candidate for Board of Selectmen. This is the 2nd year we have only had one candidate for Selectmen, and I hope in my time on the board, we can work to get more people interested in running for local office. I feel all of us in this room have a lot in common. We want reasonable taxes and not to be taxed out of our homes as we age and retire. We want nice schools for our children and our grandchildren, and we want Dayton to remain a small town. I also feel many of us have some amount of anxiety with all of the projects going on and that we're facing, including a potential for a new fire station, work at the Dayton Elementary School, and funding the Bristol Plymouth High School project. I have a few core principles about myself that I will apply to these issues each and every day. First, I recognize we are on lean times. We are at a point where our yearly 2.5% increase just isn't cutting it. I think the Board of Selectmen should have an active role in encouraging department heads to apply for grants, including our full-time professional administrative staff that work for the Board of Selectmen. It's raining money out there, and I don't think we're getting wet. We need to push our staff to bring in that money. I think we can all recognize we're not getting it from the small amount of businesses that we have in town, and grants are one solution to that. Further, I'm a simple guy. If you know me, I call myself a meat and potatoes guy. I promise with each and every decision I must vote on, it will be based on the facts as presented. I know I cannot make everyone happy, but I will do what is best for the majority of the town, and I will be a voice for everyone in town. I am an independent thinker and person, and that is just what you'll get with me. I look forward to talking with the issues tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we have heard from our candidates, and it's now your turn. If you come up to the mic, just say who you want your question directed to, whether the selectman candidate or the school committee, and then you can ask your question. Okay, the floor is open. Kevin has a question. He told me he was going to have a question.
I have a question for the school committee candidates. I've expressed this to Glenn, so I just wanted to kind of talk to you both about it tonight. Is it seems like our district at the high school level is trying extremely hard to mimic BP in an effort to gain, enrollment. Have you guys had open conversations, or will you have open conversations about ways that you can set our high school program apart from BP or Bristol Aggie instead of mirroring them? And I use that example because of the recent woodworking program with the dugouts. I'm a big advocate of anybody learning a trade, but I think we should concentrate our efforts more on things that set us apart, not make us similar.
Can I take that? So Dayton Rehoboth Regional High School has been a comprehensive high school since its existence in 1954. Thank you, and you were there, right there. that year.
Nancy was a first class.
And so the way that tech education has evolved since then is the state has established these, specialty schools like BP, Diamond, Bristol Aggie, et cetera. And they have what's called a curriculum of career technology education. Woodworking is in that curriculum. The curriculum lists about 80 or so different courses or themes of courses. Now, the problem is the state, since they've established these centers of excellence in career technical education, will not allow comprehensive schools like Fall River, BM High School, or Dayton Rehoboth Regional High School to add a new comprehensive program unless the surrounding districts' career tech ed school agree to it. And when we, a few years back, we were expanding our biology and sustainability program, and we had a very thriving program. We went to Bristol Aggie and said, hey, do you have any problems with this? And Bristol Plymouth, do you have any problems with this? Bristol Plymouth said, no, we're not going to get involved with that. Bristol Aggie said, we absolutely are going to get involved with that. In fact, we're building a new building, and that's going to be the core centerpiece of the program. So we're not really mimicking anybody. We're doing the best we can do within our program. We have 8 specific programs in there now. Woodworking is one of those. It's actually, I think, the second most popular next to auto shop and machine shop. So we're going to continue to strengthen that program, to emphasize that program. Remember, those programs bring in what's called Chapter 74, which is actually additional money over and above the regular education college prep students. So we're not abandoning that program, but we can't really expand it unless the other schools let us. And as of right now, they don't want to let us do anything else. Thank you.
Glenn?
Yeah, to basically add on, everything Chris said is absolutely correct. Our current administration is seeing the value, and most people with kids nowadays are seeing that there's a big drive towards folk educational programs, and DR always has had the vocational program, and it's kind of like even my son next year, we're planning on getting him into the drafting and education, but also you get the full experience of what a traditional high school has been. And, not to say anything against BP or Bristol Aggie, but, 20 years ago, they used to view that differently, and now they've come where the 3 are almost similar, where you traditionally didn't see people going to BP and necessarily deciding, well, I'm going to go to college. Now it's just as common for them to go there. So residents of the town have all, 3 options to go to. They all have different pros and cons, but, as we always say, we're here to attract the kids to the high school because, we want to see DR thrive. We want to see, ultimately, it's cheaper for the town when kids go to DR versus the other 2. So it's a catch-22 because it's not like we're trying to discourage families from going there. The town voted to become part of those regional districts, but it's the emphasis right now with, Superintendent Rooney. Attleboro had a really good CTE program that he was building, and he's trying to do what he can with what we have to make it appealing for kids to, maybe at the middle school here decide, hey, DR has an option. I can do some mechanical work and kind of continue on with my friends and everything, so.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Question for maybe planning board or anybody else as impact. I mean, we keep seeing the companies coming in and trying to develop, right? Specifically homes. And I'm just curious, thoughts around the sustainability of our current infrastructure with some of these large developments that they're trying to do, if you see them as being, you know, us able to withstand the increase in utility usage and things of that nature, with them trying to add, you know, 140 or whatever it was over at the Dayton Woods or something like that. Just curious if we have the ability to absorb that as currently stands, so that we kind of get an understanding of the developments going on.
So you want that to go to the planning board?
Yeah,
to
yeah, and then,
Dan?
right, yeah, that would be great, that'd be good with Tim, yeah.
No, I think there is, the infrastructure right now, it varies by parts of town, but it's not sustainable for that kind of growth in many areas. In fact, the recent decision by the planning board to deny the request for the Forest Street subdivision was based on a couple things, but one of them was lack of a clear plan for water source. And that's a problem in a lot of towns, I mean, a lot of areas of town right now, so it kind of makes development there not really viable. The developers who own the property are capable of operating within the guidelines and the bylaws that the town has set up. And I know there have been discussions about 40B overrides and that sort of things, but a lot of the developments are just strictly by the books, based upon what the bylaws allow, that sort of thing. So part of the planning board's job is to be as fair and equitable as possible to apply the rules as the town has set them. But the town is getting maxed out in infrastructure, so it's not really feasible in a lot of areas for that kind of expansion to continue. You're correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I speak to that?
Yes, we have two candidates that would like to speak to that, Mark and Nancy. Mark, you first.
So I can't speak about exactly as far as, you know, how much it can withstand, but part of my platform was impact fees. And to Selectman Hull's credit, he's brought this up during his time, and to Building Commissioner Aguirre, he talked about it at Selectmen's meetings. And you know, the thought process behind impact fees are when these builders come to town, if we say, hey, you know, water's, you know, you're going to put a story on water or our sidewalks or our library, you know, that you can do special acts in the legislature or bylaws that will allow the town to recoup what's owed to the taxpayers. So, you know, when we hear from boards that we are being overtaxed and our resources are being overdrawn with these developers, you know, at least we can get what's entitled to us. So I hope you know, definitely in my time as a board, we're going to bring this up again, and hopefully we can get this to the finish line. I don't know if it's right for Dayton, but I'd like for us to at least speak about it publicly and get more public input on this issue, and at least just see if it's right for us. So, you know, there are other communities that's done this, you know, in Barnstable County and others, and I think it's something that we need to talk about, because there's going to be more of these, and so it's sometimes coined pay as you grow. Thank you.
Nancy?
I'll address it from both a stormwater and an assessor's point of view. When a developer comes into town, whether they want to build homes or a solar farm, Stormwater Committee gets involved when, after the other appropriate boards like planning have acted on it. Obviously, Stormwater looks at it to enforce the Clean Water Act, which is federal legislation. These solar farms are usually on pieces of property that are not currently being taxed as residential property. When a piece of property is converted to a solar farm, the property, the real estate, is then taxed as commercial property with a value of $40,000 per acre. So needless to say, the real estate taxes that are collected on that property rise rapidly. And those taxes are the responsibility of the property owner. And then we also have a tax on personal property. And the personal property are all those panels and wires and poles and everything that goes into it. I realize people aren't happy with solar farms. Trees get cut down. It's not all on vacant old land that no one's using. And there is a loss as far as the environment. The good thing about it is, on average, they have a life of 20 years, and if they don't renew and put in new equipment, they're going to go, and they have to take them down. So the land will be restored back to as close to what it was originally. So there is a tax advantage with solar farms. Just to let you know, that's probably not something people realize.
Thank you. Questions?
Hi. The question I have is either for Dan or Matt. Is there anything that you can do to, I don't want to use the word coerce, businesses to come to town to lessen our taxes, that they're not jumping through 50 million hoops in order to do this? What I've seen is that it's very difficult for somebody to come into town and open a business because of some of our rules and regulations. And I'd like to know if we can work with that. Okay? Thank you.
No, I do think there is, and you're right, it's not an act of coercion, it's an act of creating opportunities. The more onerous and expensive it is for a business to open up, the less likely they are to come here. Surprisingly, the greatest growth that we have seen in Dayton over the past several years has been in home-based businesses. And I don't think that's unique to Dayton. It's the next wave of businesses at the invention of the internet. It's been going on for 20-plus years now. People have the opportunity to work from home. It's also much less expensive to start up as a home-based business. I actually, not as a member of the Planning Board, but as a member of the Development Industrial Commission, will be getting on the agenda for the Planning Board in the April-May timeframe to try to make some suggested revisions to the town's bylaws to make it easier for home-based businesses to operate. I think there's a lot of restrictions that are placed on it now that are not necessary. It's also important that the committees in town, all of which have vital roles, are able to operate more fluidly. There's nothing worse than a treadmill of a developer coming to town being bounced from committee to committee to committee, which takes time, which means it takes money. And I think the town has made a lot of progress in that respect in terms of getting a single peer review to serve all of the committees. The town administrator meets regularly with the town heads, department chairs, to try to coordinate things where things are starting to go awry, where people are getting bounced between committees. So there are definite things that we can do to make Dayton a more attractive place. And I would like to definitely pursue those going forward with suggestions.
Mark?
So I'd like to echo kind of what Dan said, and I've watched the hard work they've done on the Dayton Development Industrial Commission, where they've talked about trying to make either pamphlets or public educational materials for businesses to kind of help navigate the complicated process it is to start a business in town. And I'm sure Nancy could correct me because I probably won't say it right, but I know selectmen have a part of a vote where you can shift the tax, burden more on the business side or the residential side, and I think businesses should definitely be treated equally to the residents and not shift more of the tax burden on our businesses. We need to be business friendly, and also planning. Part of a selectman's job is planning for our future, and they recently had Serpent come in and talk about some of the underutilized buildings that we have in town and how we can have certain districts, and that's another one of those things that who knows if that's right for Dayton, but they're planning. Those are the first steps, and talking about it, because those visions that they had would bring in businesses and make it more friendly. So it's important to continue those discussions so that we can be business friendly. And I do think it starts having your elected leaders say, hey, we want businesses in town, we're open to talking to you, please, we're open for business, come talk to us, because you do need to have that notion in town hall, and you actually have to come out and say it. We want the business here in Dayton. Thank you.
Mrs. Gale, may I address that?
Yep, go ahead, Nancy.
What Mark said is true, but I will tell you this. This is the first year that, at least since I've been an assessor, that the tax burden had a major shift to businesses. And the reason it was done was because when we looked at the amount of money we needed to raise and appropriate through taxation, if the shift had not been made more to business this year, there would have really been a substantial increase in the personal real estate taxes. So the majority of taxpayers in town, they probably saw an increase, but the fact of the matter was, it would have been a lot worse. It was a question of, what are we going to do this year? We certainly, as assessors, recognize the importance to get business in here and to keep business. But this is the first time it happened that there was a significant shift, and it was in favor of the residential taxpayer.
Thank you. Questions?
Question for Mark. Curious on your opinion on, many of us have been asking, and Nancy and Woody brought it up at the last selectmen's meeting, the topic of how's the town planning on paying for the Bristol Aggie construction note and the Bristol Plymouth construction note. And, we keep bringing it up because this year we're strapped for cash, but yet we're being asked to cut, all these areas. And we've known these bills were coming and haven't seen one chance or one attempt to get a override passed. I'm curious on your position and if you'll be behind it soon.
Thank you. Mark?
Thank you. So, we've been talking about Bristol Plymouth and how we're going to pay for it and Bristol Aggie for a long time. And I think we have a really good opportunity this November to have a ballot question to ask how we're going to fund it. Preferably a debt exclusion to pay for this debt. Once every 4 years we have a presidential election, we have a chance to get 80% of our town out to come out and vote, so we can really hear from the majority of our residents. And, I had the same thoughts as, what's taking them so long? Why aren't the selectmen, putting it on the ballot? But after talking to our town administrator, I can understand why. They really needed to, I can't speak for the selectmen, but I think the notion was they needed to see what the real impact is going to be. What are the actual services that could potentially be cut and those costs? So the longer they kind of waited until that time, they could say, this is exactly what the cost will be, or this is what the difference is, rather. So we're here now, though. I mean, we're talking about our budget, and we clearly need to talk about how to fund it. So I think the discussion has to start right now, starting in the selectmen's meetings, because there's a public education piece to this. We need to start educating the public that a vote is coming, be it September or November. I'd prefer November. And strictly factual, these are our options, for our potential debt exclusion for the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. May I address that?
Yes, you may, Mrs. Goulart.
My personal opinion is, when the second bond issue passed, even though Berkeley, Dayton, and Rehoboth didn't support it, we don't have any options. Those are regional school assessments for the Aggie School and for BP. The only way to fund it is through debt exclusion, which means, yes, our taxes are going to go up. But if we don't do that and think we can afford to pay for this through our real estate taxes and our local income, services are going to be cut. Years ago, when I was on the FinCom, we had extremely tight times, and people were very upset. We went for debt exclusions for roof work on our schools because it was the only way we could pay for it. People want the services in town that they're used to. The only way to do that is with debt exclusion. And quite frankly, if it failed, if I were on the Board of Selectmen or even on the FinCom, I would have continued to bring it back. By making us wait longer, it's not going to solve the problem. It's going to be painful. There's no question about it. It's going to cost money. But I really think when you look down the road at leadership and where are we going from a financial standpoint, think about your own lives. If you all say, I'm going to get married or I'm going to buy a home, whatever, that's probably going to be the biggest debt you ever face. this debt, two debts that we're facing, have got to get resolved. There's no question about it. And a 2.5 override doesn't have a prayer, and the FinCom has never brought it forward. But you need to be aware of this, and this should have been voted on long before now, and it's about time that vote was called.
Thank you.
I have a question for the town clerk candidate.
Okay.
What are your thoughts and what are your position on the continuance of mail-in voting for both local and national elections?
So with the mail-in voting, we really don't have a choice when it comes to our presidential primaries, the presidential election, the November 5th election coming up. We just don't have a choice for vote by mail. When it comes to local, my thought process was we get a card in the mail that says, all elections, vote by mail. So what happens is if you get all the elections and they choose it, the state, it's not required to do a vote by mail for local. However, when you have these 4-year elections, and it only happens, every 4 years or whatever, so basically, when you have that card, what happens is the state recommends you send either the local, because it says all elections, to do vote by mail, or you can basically send a letter saying, we've decided not to do vote by mail. So the cost difference was like $600 or whatever for vote by mail. Do I agree with the vote by mail this term? Of course I do, because I believe that when you get a card in the mail that says, I want to vote by mail all elections, I want to vote by mail just presidential primary, we have to give the residents the option to be able to do this vote by mail. I mean, it's I think important for this time, but do I think we should do vote by mail every single year? Maybe not for local, if we don't have a presidential election.
Thank you. Yep, go ahead, Mark.
I just want to add one thing about vote by mail. So new this year, there was a group of communities who petitioned the state auditor for local elections to be reimbursed for their costs for vote by mail. So when the town of Dayton first started discussing this last year, that wasn't a thing. But now, they said, hey, you're mandating us to send out, these vote by mail ballots. We should get reimbursed for it. So most of the costs that the town will have, even for local elections, are subject to reimbursement. Basically anything required by law, by the Votes Act, we can get reimbursed. So you're still taxed on it. You still have to raise the money, but you do get reimbursed by the state auditor's office. So for local and state.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Rafa, come up to the mic.
Actually, I have 3 questions for 3 different individuals. I want to start with Parks and Rec. What are the chances of Dayton having a dog park?
It's funny because when Glenn ran down, I thought that he was going to ask me that question. So we've talked about this on a few different occasions, and my personal opinion is that it's highly unlikely. And the main reason why I say that is because I don't think we have the capacity to maintain it, whether it be, through the Board of Health, our animal control officer. It's an extremely difficult facility to maintain and really keep a handle on. I always like to say the number one thing that gets said at the dog park is, oh my God, my dog has never done that before. It's a massive liability for the town. And another reason, I always like to just in general, whenever somebody brings up an idea, you get tossed, a couple people will say, oh, I would be great to have a dog park. I think we would put a little bit more time and effort into looking into it if we had a massive amount of people, like really, behind it. I would at least entertain it and put the effort into figuring out whether or not we could really do it. But when and not to say that, I don't care about anyone's ideas, because I do. It's a lot easier for us to kind of fight that battle with you if, you bring the masses with us.
Yeah.
Like, I'll use pickleball
I can
as
help
an
you
example.
resolve that problem. There is a Facebook page called Dighton for Dogs. There's about 700 people who are in that page, and I could easily ask them, do you think we should have a dog park? I think most of them will say yes. So if other towns can have their own dog park, regardless of the population, I don't see the reason why Dighton cannot have one as well. So that's all. Second question is to the moderator. I know you're very interested in history. I'm the vice chair, selectman. I'm the vice chair.
thought you were asking me a
of the Dighton Historical Commission. Sorry. I know you're very interested in history, and we've had discussions about history. If elected, actually, well, you're going to win anyway, but can you promise to, with all your might and power and soul and mind, to assist the Historical Commission as far as preserving and maintaining local Dighton history, which is being erased every day, every minute, every hour?
So Dayton history is very important, but kind of like Nancy said, about the shifting the tax rate, everything's a balancing act, and I know there's costs for everything. So I can assist you with my time, but you have my support, but it's the townspeople at the town meeting who's going to support whether we are going to fund, saving buildings or any of our architecture or any of that. So I support the Dayton Historical Commission, and you have my time, but as far as everything's a balancing act, and we all need to work together. I talked about grants in my opening statement to bring in money and resources and, put the time in. So, I appreciate our history, but I also appreciate that and know that everything has a cost.
Okay,
Thank you.
And my third question is addressed to the library candidate, Rita. I'm not sure of the library's history as far as inviting speakers to present seminars or any type of subject or discussion that might interest the public. But with the library, do you envision perhaps having free courses for adults who may need some, some education that they never had? Because I have an academic background. I taught French. My major is literature. I am dying to offer free literature courses
We would be
in
happy.
the library.
And now with the new library, we'll be able to expand on things. Our new director has brought in programs once a month, and there's so many new opportunities. And yes, we would love to have courses going on once we're open, once there's the space to do that. Can I make a reference to the dog park too?
Sure.
I've bred and shown dogs for 32 years. And people will say, oh, my dog is friendly. Your dog is not friendly. It's going after my dog. Dog parks, if you want a dog park, in my opinion, they should be done by size. The smaller dogs
I
versus
agree.
the bigger dogs, because you're up for a big liability with the dog park. But yes, on the courses and stuff, it'd be great. Just let us know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Raph.
Thank you. Anyone else with a question?
Could
No?
I make a statement about the historical that he referred to?
Sure.
Rafa, I'm glad you brought that up about historical things. My own experience in this town, and I'm sort of a historical relic, quite frankly, has been that when I really wanted something done, I would go to the appropriate board, committee, whatever, but there wasn't always time, or maybe not all the interest that I had. That's how I ended up writing the anniversary book for our 300th anniversary, because we had a committee, and it was working, and then there was some major, I'll call them resignations, which left the committee high and dry, and I volunteered to help them. And at a meeting, I said, by the way, who's writing the anniversary book? And they said, we're not doing that. There's no time, and we've got no one to do it. And I volunteered to do it, and with the help of Ron O'Connor, the photographer, and about the 60 people that are listed in the front of that book, we were able to get the pictures, the support, the information, everything we needed. And thank goodness we were able to get it printed at BP, because if we went to a commercial printer, we never could have done it. But in any case, I understand your frustration. It is important to preserve historical things in town, whether they're buildings, whether they're events, or anything else. And that's why that book was written not as a history, but as a factual report on what happened for the anniversary, but also the other people that are mentioned in there and what they've contributed to this town.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? No. Would any of the candidates, since it's only 8 o'clock, we're really early, like to do a closing statement for 1 minute?
I'd like to say something, if that's okay.
Go ahead, Shara.
I just wanted to say, I would like to say I'm truly loving my position as town clerk. It has been extremely rewarding. I just wanted to say I'm really fortunate to work with an exceptional team. The assistant town clerk, Rebecca Mello, and senior clerk, Ashley Dagnall. With our collaborative spirit, I know we will continue to drive our success, but I just definitely wanted to say thank you, especially to them.
Thank you. Dan, do you want to say anything?
Yes, I did want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I just wanted to use the minute to follow up on something I had ran out of time on before, which is talking about how to entice businesses in town. And there are two things I'm hoping that the planning board will bring up for discussion purposes this year. One is expanding mixed use, and I think people look at mixed use and think about more residents in business areas. That is one possibility, but the other possibility is more businesses in residence areas. We're not suburbia, we're not divided into little homes that no businesses are allowed in, and I kind of like the old days where there was a business on every corner and places were in close proximity. The other is the idea that our zoning right now is based upon use, which is retail goes here, industrial goes there, et cetera. And there are other forms of zoning that can be looked at. One is based upon scale, which is it doesn't matter what you're doing, it depends on the size of what you're doing. There are places in town that it's appropriate to have a large facility, and there are places in town where it's appropriate to have a small facility, regardless of what the facility is, and kind of carving it out into what you're doing as opposed to how big you are, I think opens up a lot of options too. So, thank you.
Great, thanks, Dan. Kevin?
Again, just thank you everyone for coming out, and thank you to the Friends for putting this on. I just want to take a minute to encourage everyone to come out and vote on April 6th. I know it's a little bit difficult to get really excited about a slate of candidates who are unopposed, but it's another form of public input. And I know for myself, public input is invigorating. It makes me want to serve more. So whether it's through your vote or coming out to meetings in either or any of my roles, whether it's on a committee or as an elected official, I'm always open to hearing your thoughts, and it helps me do better for you. So again, just please come out and vote, and thank you all for your support.
Thank you. Christopher?
Kevin just stole my idea, but thanks, Kevin. Yeah, speaking for myself, I also appreciate the public input. My email address and phone numbers on the DR website, www.drregional.org. So if anyone needs to reach me privately, they're able to do that. And as I mentioned earlier in the opening, we sometimes talk about public input, and there's very rarely public input there unless there's 21 teachers and staff members getting cut. So anytime, every second and fourth Tuesday of the month, if you happen to be in the area, Law and Order is the repeat that night, come out and come to the high school and participate in the activities of the regional school district. We appreciate your feedback and we'd love to see you. So thank you all.
Glenn?
Can I just thank everyone again for coming out tonight. Thanks for the library for putting this on. And as Chris echoed, it's a lifeline. Time's up. No, just to echo, as Chris had said, it's great to see when people start getting involved. As much as we hate to say it, when we have contentious things that come up, it is encouraging when you see people get together. And same as taxpayers in the upcoming, budget constraints that are probably going to come from the town. It's, collaboratively, we don't want to see one side versus the other, because that doesn't usually end well. We saw what happened in Rehoboth a few years back, but as we've been saying, the educational value of the town, we need to figure out how to fund some of these big debts that the town has coming with projects. So appreciate everyone's involvement. So.
Thank you. Rita?
I urge you, if you haven't met the new library director, to go and see him. He's got a lot of great ideas and programs, and Rafa, I'm sure he'd love to hear from you, because we've talked about all this, and because of COVID and our space, we've been limited, but hopefully after the first of the year and we get into that building, we're going to have a great library and a lot of good programs.
Nancy?
I just want to thank everybody for coming out. I know there's not a lot of enthusiasm with everyone running without opposition. I'm just glad that every position has got somebody running for it because, as I said, all of these jobs have to be done. And if you want to have programs, you've got to have people who work in them to get them done. And it's that important. They're not all paid positions, but this is your town, and you need to speak up, and you need to support those who are willing to do the work. So thank you very much, and hopefully see you on Election Day.
Thank you. And Mark?
Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. As your next selectman, I really look forward to working to get the debt exclusion on the next ballot this fall. I look forward to getting the discussion going about getting folks more involved in our elected positions and our boards and committees, and getting the impact fee discussion going again, and hopefully bringing that to the finish line if it's right for our town. I really wanted to come in tonight. My goal was to talk without a script this morning, and this afternoon it didn't happen, and that's because I recognize that I answer to everyone in this room. I answer to the taxpayers of Dayton, and I recognize that. So the fact you can still get chills sitting up here and talking to you, it means I realize that I answer to you, and I will be your voice. So thank you for your support, and I want to say when after the election, I'll make sure my cell phone and emails posted on the website like many of my predecessors have done, because I will be available for your questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And thank you to everyone who came out tonight to meet our candidates. And we'll see you on April 6th at elections. So thank you and good night.